I'm a cinematographer who color grades about 3/4 of the work I do. I did Blackmagic Design's own advanced color training, and I have a deep understanding of color spaces, gamma, and I understand what the different parts of the color page do and what they were designed to do. I've been using the mini panel for about 3 years now. The new Davinci Resolve Micro Color Panel has been reviewed by a ton of people, but at least in the ones that I've watched, no one has mentioned what I think is the fatal flaw of this panel. Obviously, this panel is much smaller than both the old micro and the mini panel, which is nearly identical to the micro but has 2 LCD screens on top and a few extra buttons and dials. It also costs about 1/4 of the price. Additionally, it has Bluetooth connectivity and a slot for an iPad. The size and the Bluetooth connectivity were what made me try it out. Rigging the mini panel to be easily reachable is no small feat. It weighs like 25 pounds, it's an awkward shape, and it took me a few tries to build something into my workflow, into my setup. I had to use a Versa mount to integrate it into my current workstation. Additionally, not only do you have to run a USB-C cord to these older panels, you also need to power them with this big, heavy, thick AC adapter. This new panel is light like the speed editor. You don't have to have any cords attached to it while you're working. You can charge it up every couple of days. Everything else I use, tablets, panels, keyboard, and mouse, are like this. My color panel is the last piece that had to be tethered to my desktop. So I was willing to make some concessions with this panel if it could work for me. The main footage I work with now and for the foreseeable future is raw footage. I was hoping that we'd be able to use the iPad to add functionality and convenience, that it would be similar to the LCD screens that are on the mini panel, because the screens on the mini panel add functionality to all the tools. Right now, it can't do that. The only extra usage you get is having a third screen to have your scopes popped out on, and that's nice, but for the moment, Blackmagic is not taking advantage of the iPad screen space. The main flaw of this panel is that it doesn't have a button for the raw panel. And not only that, you can't get into the raw panel with any current button combination. I really don't understand the logic in not including a dedicated button for the raw panel when your own cameras shoot in B-RAW, which should be graded in the raw panel. And let me show you why access to the raw panel and the LCD panel information is so important. And this is the one thing that I haven't seen any other reviewer talk about. There's this strange additional amount of control you have when you're using the mini panel to grade raw footage. In Davinci Resolve, the little slider stops at 100, and everywhere else it stops at 100. But if you have the mini panel with that LCD screen, there is no limitation. You can go all the way up, to 1,000. A lot of times I find it's actually essential to be able to have a super high range when pulling down the extreme highlights of a shot. In Davinci Resolve, the sliders only go to 100. I remember being really surprised that you couldn't enable those sliders to reflect what the mini panel could do to have this expanded range. But I guess there needs to be reasons to buy these different panels. I didn't realize how much of my color grade I did in the raw panel until I tried to use this particular panel and the Resolve sliders to grade some raw footage. I found it nearly impossible to grade log raw footage with a large dynamic range shot without this feature. You're using your raw footage to capture the maximum dynamic range, and you should be trying to use all of that raw image information to grade your image and not skipping to the next step to use less powerful tools. At the moment, the one user programmable button also has no way to be programmed, and the full user manual still hasn't been released. I'd wager that it would be a button combo to access the raw panel with one of the first updates at a minimum, because there is no keyboard shortcut to access the raw panel anyway. So even when the user programmable button is able to be programmed, there is no keyboard shortcut that could get you into the raw panel. I have to imagine I'm not the only one that's surprised that there's no direct access or any access at all. There's none of these dials do anything in the raw panel. These drawbacks are a bummer because this panel's buttons, wheels, dials, and even the little things like status lights for active buttons all feel like upgrades over those on the older and more expensive panels. After using panels for 3 to 4 years now, I can tell you that the ability to leave the image in full screen while you're using the dials and knobs to control the color grade consistently yields a better image, and it speeds up the process. Just because this panel won't work for me doesn't mean it necessarily won't work for anyone or that it's made for prosumers. There are plenty of people out there that make content without using raw capture or log colored profiles. And if this does describe you, this would probably be a really good fit and a really useful tool. Blackmagic Design is one of my favorite companies because they consistently give us more for our money. Their cameras consistently punch above their weight class. I'd bet this panel gets some sort of big upgrade by utilizing the tablet space to provide additional options for color grading. But the way it is right now, I currently just can't justify owning a second panel, but I'll revisit that when or if this gets the upgrades to match my workflow. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.